And thank you, Pam. And hello, everybody. Welcome to I'm for Fun. It's a great day. There's some good news out there to start out with today. Here in the U.S., our hot topics begin with the coronavirus cases posted the lowest and slowest spread in the pandemic since it began a year ago. The CDC said that the vaccinated people very soon can start visiting indoor without masks. Globally, over 312 million shots have been given, and we're seeing celebratory vaccinations, play on words, are giving the travel industry really a boost, and that's a big hooray to the travel industry. This past week in the U.S. Airlines carried an average of more than 1 million passengers a day, and the highest since a non-holiday total uh, period since the pandemic began gutting our travel industry about a year ago. This past Sunday, a total of 1.28 million was were traveling, and it's the third highest travel since 1 year ago, mid March. And it is 1 year ago this week that everything basically began to shut down, and we're seeing it beginning to open up. So that is really good news. Here in the US, a lot of states are lifting, as I said, the mask updates, and they're opting to return back to business as normal and as fast as they can to 100% operations. Over in the UK, more than one third of the population has received their first dose of the vaccine, and deaths are continuing to fall. And that's great news for our friends in Great Britain and our IAAPA chairman, Amanda Thompson. So, cheers over there, guys. Good news. Here in back in the United States, California parks, new guidelines came out from the governor a few days ago, which changed the entire blueprint for a safer economy. They've retained the same four tiers, but changed what businesses can do in each tier and changed the COVID case numbers to change in those different tiers. The state has administered about 1.6 million vaccines and is expected to hit 2 million in the next 2 weeks. And before the April 1st date, when the new rules for the theme parks go into effect, they hope to reach 4 million by the 1st of May. So they're still in their tiers, the red, the orange, the yellow, and the purple. But it looks like that they're going to be able to open here as we move into April. Bob Chapek over at Disney has said that he thinks it's going to be mid to late April when the Disney parks open. So, current happenings down in Florida at Walt Disney World. Great news down there with the spring break crowds arriving at Walt Disney World this year. Crowds are expected to fill really all the four theme parks. The Disney Resort guests and theme park tickets have tickets for their guests have really sold out, and there are no really availabilities from the 15th through the 18th at this period of time, and that's basically for all the Disney parks. So that's great news. um, the In the world, Universal announced that its new park in Florida, Epic Universe, is back on track for resuming construction after having been halted for 8 months. Its opening was originally set for 2023. They pushed that back right now to a tentative 2025, possibly sooner. After several delays, Universal in Osaka, Japan, is finally going to open its long planned Super Nintendo World, and it's actually begun that with a soft opening. So it's going to limit the number of people in the park at any given time because of the pandemic. And I'll talk more about Japan in just a second. Over in Germany, zoos in Germany were allowed to open this week after 18 weeks of shutdown. After 4 months of closure, museums in Germany were allowed to open with a surprise message by the government. And that's good news. And I think that bodes well for our friends who operate the theme parks throughout Germany. They've been ramping up with their vaccine, with about 2.5 million people in Germany receiving doses. So it's slowly but surely, but it's coming and it's heading in the right way. Back to Japan just for a second. It was announced that Japan's government will ban overseas fans from attending the Olympic Games, which is a huge disappointment for a lot of people. Japan has struggled to get the games to this point with a lot of domestic upheaval about conducting the Olympics. It really hasn't been popular among the Japanese public at this point in time. So they've only been able to register about 50,000 doses of vaccine to their 175 million plus population. So we're moving in the right direction. We haven't been able to see this kind of positive movement for quite a while. So great news on the global front. I want to introduce my first guest, but before I do, I want to thank two great friends in the industry and great friends of mine, Tom Sheehan with the Sheehan firm and Roger Berry with the Ralph Alberts Company. We had a lot of fun in putting together with them our introductions for our guest, Francine Gonzalez, today. So thanks, guys, if you're listening and watching today. Really appreciate it. Got a lot of wonderful comments, and as you say, Roger, stay thirsty, my friends. My guest today, Francine Gonzalez, is a well-respected individual and has been really on both sides of the industry ledger. She's been an operator and she's a supplier. So she knows the landscape well. Francine has a great history in our industry, and it's one of those stories that you like to tell. I'm going to capsulize some of it, but she's been in the industry about 35 years, started in the aquatics industry. She was a pre-med student at Stanford when she decided to get legitimate and come into the carny business. So that was a great, smart move on your part, Francine. She's her past experiences. She's worked in top positions at the Great Wolf Resorts with Six Flags, Golfland Entertainment, and Wet and Wild Water World. She's been with Whitewater since 2013, starting as VP of Business Development and then Executive VP of the Americas. And most recently, very recently, was named Chief Experience Officer for the company. So going to be fun to hear about that. She's very respected as a strategic visionary for her ability to build teams in all of the companies that she's been associated. She's the current chair of the ASTM F24 Committee on Amusement Rides and Devices. And she's been an inductee into the World Water Park Association Hall of Fame. She's a huge advocate, a strong advocate for our industry and its attention to safety, and has been doing that since her beginning. And she's been named twice to the top 50 park influencers in our industry. So with that background, and I could go on and on, Francine, welcome. Good to see you. How are you?
Thanks, Dennis. It's great to be here.
Thank you. We're glad to have you. How are you doing today? What's going on down in Florida? I hope the weather's great and you're starting to see people arrive.
Well, it's beautiful. And I'll tell you, I just walked the beach this morning with Michael, and spring break is in full swing. And the beaches are getting more and more full. And I'll tell you, everybody's coming to Florida.
Well, as you heard in my hot topics, it looks like Disney and Universal's experiencing the same thing, and I'm sure it's the same for SeaWorld and the other activities over on iDrive. So it looks like it's going to be a great spring break. As I said, this is right when it hit us last year and everything stopped and everybody began shutting down very near to this date. So what a difference a year makes in our industry. It's great.
Yeah, and I'm so excited for all the parks because I was talking with a friend of mine who's on the regulatory side, and I said, isn't it better for people to experience the parks where they can control the experience rather than just saying everything's going to be shut down and then everybody's going to find entertainment wherever they want to? And so I would rather have this kind of controlled environment at one of the parks and really give people a chance to entertain themselves, especially in this year.
Well, we've seen at Christmas and Thanksgiving, and Halloween, we saw a breakout for those parks that could adapt and have people come in and be entertained outside. And that was a great bellwether for us. And I've said to a lot of the media and analysts that I really think it's going to be the Roaring Twenties here shortly. And when it does open, it's going to be a huge dam that breaks. And I think all heck is going to break loose with the industry. And hooray for us, we need that.
Absolutely.
Uh, Francine, you do have a wonderful background. You started out like a lot of people in the industry, including myself. I was a ticket taker. You started out cleaning swimming pools. So we both kind of started at the bottom, I guess, and you've worked your way up. Uh, Give us a couple of minutes on your background, how you got involved and why you decided to make that transition that I addressed from medicine into aquatics.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start with the idea that I've worn a lot of hats over the years. So I'm going to go with that theme. So I'll start
Okay.
off first with one hat. This is my dad's hat from where he used to work. He was a carpenter and a welder, worked in a machine shop. And so in the mornings, he would drop me off at the local water park and I'd go clean the swimming pool. So that was my job at 14 years old. And all through high school, I just kind of kept going back to the same water park. My mom had worked there, my sister had worked there, and it was the local place. It was outside, it was fun. I was very athletic back then. You'd never guess it now, but and so for me, it was great fun to be a lifeguard, to be a lifeguard supervisor, and so on. But you know, I had always had this interest in science. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Luckily, and thankfully, I studied hard and my parents really supported me and I found myself at Stanford University. I studied pre-med, I studied genetics of all things. I thought I was going to go off and be some famous doctor somewhere, but every single summer I kept coming back to the water park and coming back to the water park. And I remember there was a time I was going to just stay in Palo Alto. I was going to do an internship, and the owner called me and just said, "Well, aren't you coming back?" And I said, "Well, you want me to come back?" They're like, "Absolutely. In fact, we want you to keep moving up in our organization." And so I ended up going back. I fell in love when I went to a WWA one of their big trade shows. And that's when I kind of like it hit me. Oh my gosh, this business is so much bigger than this little water park where I was working.
Yeah.
And I remember deciding not to go to medicine, not to take the MCAT, I was working full time. In fact, my owner used to fly me home all through from spring break till the end of my last quarter, which is around in June. And I'd fly home every single weekend to go do all the hiring and the training and the staffing. In fact, I did one of my chemistry midterms through fax. They faxed it over to me and I did my chemistry midterm, faxed it back, and it was great. But in any case, I ended up staying in the business and I really loved that aspect of it. It was fun, it was energetic, but it was mostly about people. So,
Hmm.
so my next stint after Wet n Wild Water World, which by the way, Barry Edwards, Chandra Edwards, fantastic people, family-owned business, and just really took the time to let me do as many things as I could in the park. And that's what kind of got me started. So my next gig was actually being the general manager of Waterworld Safari. And so this was my first gig as the boss. And I was working for Waterworld Safari. I had a young team. We had to reimagine the water park. And right about that time, there was an insurance crisis right in the middle of it. And I remember having the insurance company ready to tell us that we were not going to be insured anymore.
I
And
remember
so it was
that.
happening, nobody could get insurance. And so I remember going to this meeting, the lawyer calls me up and says, "Francine, we need you at this meeting." I go to this meeting and the insurance guy the CEO is like, "Well, this is wrong, this is wrong." I'm like, "Well, can I just tell you what we're going to do and what we have been doing?" And this is the reason why. For some reason, my park had much lower claims, much lower injuries. And so it was what we were doing. And I said, "Look, we're going to take this program, we're going to put it to the entire company, which is 10 parks." And they said, "Okay, we'll keep you insured, but you have to do it." So rather than going off the general manager route, I was really in the safety route, corporate safety. So from there, I left there in 2004. I went to go work for Six Flags. I was running their water park at Six Flags, and this was right in the middle of the two, we had one company hostile takeover through a proxy fight, and then next thing you know, we have a whole new organization. And so being in the
Mhm.
middle of this publicly traded company through all of this kind of turmoil was a big, big lesson for me. But that
Yeah.
didn't last very long. And see, I don't have a Six Flags hat. I need to call my friend and get me a Six Flags hat.
They'll send you
So
one after this.
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. So after that, I went to Great Wolf Resorts. So, and I was at Great Wolf for almost 8 years. And what a fantastic experience. That was really a lot of, it was building new water parks and new resorts. And this was now the hospitality industry. And what an experience it was run like a family business, but it was a publicly traded company. It was
Yeah.
very, very personal. And we grew very, very quickly. So after opening 6 resorts for them, I ended up leaving there at the behest of Mr. Jeff Chutter, who made sure that I came to Whitewater. And he pestered me for a while, and I was really glad that he did so because it really expanded my horizons into the manufacturing and the supplier side of things. And I'll tell you, part of it, I remember going into the office the first day and going through all my series of meetings. And I thought I knew a lot about water park, but then I got to Whitewater and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm in kindergarten again. It was really an experience to learn the manufacturing side and the supply side. So really, really excited to be here. All throughout this history, I've had really great companies that I've worked for. And most importantly, they always supported the things that I felt was important. They felt it was important. There was really good alignment. I've been very proud of all the companies I've worked with.
Well, Jeff's done a wonderful job in building that company. I remember when he started it, and he's been one of the great exhibitors at our IAPA shows and the World Water Park Association exhibits. And he was smart. He was smart to get you as part of the team. Uh, One of the things that people have commented a lot about on the I'm for Fun podcast is the candor and the honesty that our guests have brought to the table. And we've all had to endure this last year. And I think it would be interesting for our viewers and listeners, Francine, to hear, what was the impact on Whitewater, and what audibles, I use that term a lot now, did Whitewater have to call both domestically and internationally, uh, from a product development standpoint, a product delivery standpoint, and just keeping the communication going with the clients.
Yeah, and it was very interesting because what we saw happen was obviously Asia. It hit in Asia first. And
Yeah.
we have an office in Shanghai and we have people in Hong Kong. And so we were seeing it as it was developing. And we were very concerned because we weren't quite sure how it was going to migrate. We saw SARS. SARS didn't have the same level of impact as COVID has. So
Yeah.
although SARS hit Asia very hard, we didn't see it migrate as much into the other regions of the world the way COVID did. And so I think we're keeping a very close eye on it. The experience for Asia has been very different because, 90, 120 days later, we were starting to see improvements. But as COVID was migrating to different parts of the world, we were definitely seeing it. And I remember being at the IAPA Leadership Conference in Beverly Hills, and literally it happened right in the middle when they called for the state of emergency. And we went home and it's like the whole world changed. So I think for the Americas definitely had one of the greatest impacts because we weren't seeing a recovery coming out 120 days later. In fact, it was just getting worse and worse and
Yeah.
worse. So the Americas has really kind of taken a bigger hit, but we're seeing that Asia has recovered and there's a lot of places where there's no masks, that people are back to normal. Especially Southeast Asia continues to develop. We are seeing activity in Australia. Our colleagues in New Zealand, everything's very normal for them, except for the international travel piece. And Europe has been a little bit different, and we're seeing also in India and different places. So for Whitewater, I think that there was a benefit to us that we were global and that we had the chance to recover in certain areas where other companies where maybe they're very much localized in the Americas, it's a little bit more difficult. So for Whitewater, very resilient in that fact that we were a global company. But the good news was, I mean, we kind of doubled down. We doubled down and said, now is the time for us to show our strength and to be able to do the things we wanted to do, not shy away from our strategy. In fact, we launched a product. We launched Endless Surf. So Endless
Hmm.
Surf is really the crossover between recreation and leisure and sport. And some people were thinking, well, gosh, you're launching a new product in the middle of COVID. Well, new greenfield developments did not stop. Some of them might have slowed down a little bit,
Slowed
but
down, yeah.
yeah, but people recognized that they needed to keep on going, knowing that when we come out of this, the roaring 20s, as you say, the roaring 20s are going to come and you need to be ready and
Yeah,
and making
when
your
you
money
see
early.
companies like Universal stopping Epic Universe and
Yep.
for 8 months, I mean, you can imagine the impact it has on some of these overseas. One of the things I know you're very interested in, Jane Cooper addressed when she was on with us, is talent and continuing to grow our talent. And we know, and we've heard this from so many people, and everybody who's been on, that there's been a significant loss of talent in the industry, just as there has in other industries. How are you addressing that at Whitewater, and what are some of the uh, uh, approaches you put in to make sure if the ones you've lost and you get them back in, you continue to grow?
Yeah, COVID, much like the recession, kind of teaches us a lot of lessons and kind of how to have courage. And sometimes the courage is how do you protect your business? And that might mean that you have to go through a furlough program.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of our projects stopped. I mean, people could not continue to build their projects. In fact, for some of our clients, we worked with them and said, why don't you let us just small team that's finished putting up the fiberglass. It's better to be up in the air than down on the ground just sitting there. Let's at least get to that point. So in places where we could, we did that. But there's a lot of projects where they slow down, and quite frankly, our teams out in the field, those are the ones that were most impacted. I will tell you though, if you're anticipating a retraction, you kind of have to anticipate that for your business. And we had to reduce our headcount in some places. But I'll tell you, the benefit of that is talent density, in that you keep your best people and you see them kind of thrive. But what you also see is them working really hard. Some of them had to work extra time because there was fewer people, but we still had to do the same amount of work. And I'll tell you that I saw a tremendous output and great sacrifice. But that talent density made a difference within our business. And I think that if there's a silver lining in it, it's keep your very best people. If you have to sideline some of your best people, keep them very close to you so that you can bring them back. And if you can find a place for them temporarily, please do so, because our talent is really our future.
We're starting to get some questions in. If you've watched us before, we get questions from viewers as we go along, and they're starting to roll in. Let me give you one here. It says, did you see an impact on the as a result of COVID throughout the industry on water quality issues? Because we know at the beginning people didn't understand how it was transmitted. And has that been a resultant impact? That comes from Donna.
Great. I'll say there is one thing that I was very surprised by is the lack of understanding of water chemistry. Now, remember, I'm a geek at heart. So for me, I understand it, I live in it. But not a
Yeah.
lot of people understood that chlorinated water kills bacteria and viruses and protozoa and all that other stuff. And it was really trying to match the science to the reality. And at the time, or especially early COVID, we didn't really understand, was this airborne? Was this transmitted through the water? And what's the
Yeah.
contact time that you need? Like crypto, you need to like bombard it with a ton of chlorine. But maybe for COVID, you don't have to, but nobody understood that science early on. So I would say that there were water chemistry concerns. It really put a spotlight on it. I'm on the board of the CMAQ, which is the Council for the Model Aquatic Health Code, and on the board for the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance. And there was a lot of discussion there. Thankfully, there's some brilliant people that were able to push information to the CDC. We worked really hard with the CDC to get them to understand that the mechanism, there water parks were the least of their concerns. And I think that they understood that. So you'll see that a lot of water parks opened, and we had some water parks that had 82 days of operation last year.
Wow.
Maybe
Yeah.
lower volumes, but they were open. And that's because they were able to demonstrate that they were going to take all of the precautions needed.
Uh, and we watched that and we saw that, and we were hoping that would carry over into the dry parks as it moved, and some of it did, some of it didn't. But it was good to see parks like that get their doors open. Let's jump over for a moment to the ASTM, because a lot of people aren't exactly familiar with what it is. I remember when the ASTM F-24 committee was started back in I think it was 78. I was general manager down in Kings Dominion, and we, as a company then, we were TAP Broadcasting. We supported that fully, and I've watched it grow and expand to the numbers it is and how globally it has gotten. And maybe you can give us a little overview of the ASTM and how the F-24 committee continues to function today.
I'm super proud of all of the accomplishments of F-24. So ASTM is ASTM International Safety Standards, and it goes across many industries. So there's over 30,000 members total around the world. And there's a board that kind of oversees that, but there's hundreds of committees. So aerospace and copper and concrete and cannabis and all sorts of different industries. So the amusement industry has its own, which is F-24. Actually, I do have another hat to celebrate. So celebrating Premier Rides.
Your head never gets cold.
Yeah, that's right. So ASTM had been since 1978. Many people kind of really focused in on it. When Jim Shea became the chairman, we started to see a growth spurt. And in that growth spurt, that was really because we had opened up. It wasn't just about mechanical rides. It was also about trampoline courts and parasailing and obstacle courses, zip lines. So we had opened up to go-karts and bumper boats and trains. So that opening up in the breadth of the amusement industry, all underneath F-24. Now we had 1,000 people writing standards related to these rides. We knew that it was very important that our business success was built upon safety. And because public opinion really is what's driving our business success. And so we really had to focus in on safety, be pragmatic, create those standards, and with those standards, make sure that they could be implemented around the world, not just in the US. It's not an American set of standards, it's international standards. And I think that has really helped. So what we've also done is we've done a lot of harmonization work with EN. So the Euro norm. So by law, they have to use their European standards. And we've done a lot of harmonization. So those two sets of standards are now very similar. So
when you talk about the European, you're talking about TÜV.
So TÜV is an inspection body. So the standard exists, and then TÜV inspects to that standard. So TÜV can.
Do they all work together globally?
We do. So you'll see a lot of TÜV people on the ASTM committees, but also on the EN committees. Yeah. So TÜV is an inspection body. They do excellent work, but they can inspect ASTM or to EN or to the standard that is designated. So for instance, in UAE, so in Dubai, if we have a ride that was built and designed to ASTM, and in the same park, a ride that was designed and built to EN, TÜV can inspect both of those rides, and both of those would be accepted because in Dubai, they accept both ASTM and EN. So it's really important to know that there are global industry standards, and if we just keep using those, then it would make it a lot easier, especially for the suppliers around the world, so that when they design, they're designing to one set of standards that can be used anywhere in the world. That benefits the operators too.
Am I correct in remembering that at one time they were a little not competing with one another, but separate, and then there was an obvious need to bring them together, and it happened?
Yeah, I'll tell you, IAPA was the glue.
That's what I
So
thought.
there, yeah, so there was a time where EN has a process that's a little bit slower than
Hmm.
ASTM. ASTM meets twice a year. They can change the standards pretty easily, relatively easily. So they're a lot more nimble. So as the industry has been very innovative, they can move pretty quickly. EN is really centered around mechanical rides, and in that group, what we did is we have actually put some of those committee members together, and IAPA sponsored, I shouldn't say sponsored, hosted a lot of meetings to bring those groups together to say, how can we make sure that these are similar, because that benefits all of the industry.
Right.
And we're there.
And we know who are steeped in the industry. Safety is one thing we share with everybody. We
Absolutely.
may not share attendance or revenues or per capitas or some other things, but safety is the one thing. And you're right, Jim Shea deserves a lot of credit for moving that along as he did. Let me bring in one more technical aspect to the
Okay.
ASTM and the TUV. Ames, you've been a chair of Ames,
Yeah.
and I think you remain now on the board of directors, even though you've left the chair. Uh, Give us a brief overview of what Ames is and how it differs and how it fits in, Francine.
So Ames' mission is around safety education. So if you
Yeah.
really look at kind of the trifecta, you've got IAPA, which is a trade association membership and bringing people together. ASTM are the safety standards that people can utilize, but you need to educate that membership with around the standards so that you can have a baseline of safety. Ames delivers on the education related to safety. And
Uh-huh.
so they do an annual seminar every year. And in fact, they launched, thankfully, they launched an LMS system to do online training. This was in advance of COVID.
Wow.
And it was really great. We talked a lot about whether or not we should do an LMS. And when we did that LMS, COVID hit, and very quickly they were able to continue to deliver that level of training and certification, which was so critical. And people will tell you every single committee meeting I go into, I'd be talking about we can't give up on safety. We have to keep safety in the forefront. It's not an or, it's an and. COVID and safety, and that has
Wow.
to continue to be there. So Ames has been phenomenal. They've done a magnificent job of delivering it. Now they're doing stuff in Latin America. They've been doing some training for regulators in Massachusetts and soon in California. So yeah, I think that Ames will continue to grow and be a really great source of safety education.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's good. I know we had a question come in about the clarification on that. So I knew you could address that well.
Sure.
A couple of more questions. This one comes from Bill. He said, Francine, do you think the average water park guest is going to prefer attractions that allow for ease of social distancing moving forward, or will a summer of fun and family enjoyment at a water park, along with a lot of other factors, quote unquote, uh, ease everyone's mind before many resources are committed to designing and building around unfounded fears, which we know exist?
Yeah, so I was just listening to something this morning. They were talking about how it used to be FOMO and now it's FONO. It was
Yeah.
fear of missing out, and now it's fear of normal.
I don't know. Yeah.
So the question is going to be, every region's going to have their own version of phono. So if the fear of normal is being close to each other in a ride vehicle, then we're going to have to pay really close attention to that sentiment and react to it. But I will tell you, the best behavior I've been witnessing is there's some people that can't wait for the social distancing thing to be over. We
Yeah.
can't ignore it. We know that if people are within a certain proximity, that there can be transmissions. We have to be careful. We have to be vigilant. We have to understand it. I know that several studies are being done right now to say how close is too close. But eventually, if the vaccine it permeates, and then it may be that that proximity issue is no longer an issue. So, what's the life cycle of a ride, and what's the design cycle like? And maybe we need to be talking about the experience overall. I'm more concerned about people not wanting to come to parks in general than people think be worried about getting in the ride vehicle. So what is the experience outside of those attractions that is going to be so spectacular. People want to keep coming back to that park and come back to that experience. So, the experience economy, I think, is where we're headed. And,
Mhm.
and we have to be mindful of that.
Well, this next question ties right into this, so it's perfect. It says, Francine, as this is from Damien, as Chief Experience Officer, which is a new role you recently assumed, you're responsible for creating positive guest experiences in our industry, and we all know this is can be a daunting task,
Mm.
but one that's paramount to the success. It says, would you please tell us a little bit about your role and what you do at Whitewater to ensure a positive guest experience for them and for the industry?
Sure, and I'll use another little hat of mine. This is my brother-in-law's
And
business.
Francine, most women have a closet for shoes. I think Michael has built you a hat closet.
Well, if you talk to Jim Pattison, he knows I have a pashmina closet. So I buy one everywhere I go.
That's good. I'm
Well,
sorry. Go
actually,
ahead.
Damien, this is a really great question, and thanks for asking it. The reason I put on this hat is that so my brother-in-law has a business, and he's basically a stunt coordinator for different shows. He was stunt coordinator for Breaking Bad, and when you take a look at, and I use the X because when we talk about experience, I tell people I'm the CXO. People are like, what is that? And really what it is how do you deliver an exceptional experience? So we talk about the experience economy in the park. People are expecting an exceptional experience, whether it's I'm not overwhelmed by a volume of people. I feel like I can have a really nice time with my family and I feel safe. I'm having a thrilling experience. And we're starting to see that shift a little bit to curated experiences. So people want to feel special. They want to feel like they're listened to, but they also want to feel like the experience is made for them. And so how do you make that experience for them? You have to know your customer. You have to know your client. You have to know what they want in order to deliver it. So that connection with your customer has to be super tight in order for you to know it. And I always go back to this thing that you care for what you love and you love what you know. So you have to know these people. You're going to love them, and we already love them, but that's how you care for them. So really, it's going to be about how do you curate the experience for what they want. Some people want fast, but some people want absolutely correct, and they want to be a part of every single decision. And others are like, just take care of it for me. I'll write you the check. Just take care of it for me. So really everybody's experience is different. And that's where this comes into play, is understanding the customer, understanding what they want, and really delivering on that X, which is the experience.
Well, I think it's interesting. David Rosenberg, who was on recently, you may have seen that. His title is Vice President of Guest Experience. So he has that experience in his title as well. You think we're going to see more of that in the future?
I think so. I think, when you look at the hospitality industry, it's already there. Hospitality, you show up, they know all your preferences. They have their loyalty programs, already know exactly who you are. They know what pillows you want. They know what floor you want to be on. And they look to what can they find out about you so they can curate an experience for you. Now you're seeing that coupled with curated experiences, whether it's excursions or events, exclusivity. All of that has already started. Now, how does that fit into our business today?
Yeah.
That remains to be seen. We've been a volume business. So how do we get to a place where, because of COVID, it's not a volume business? So now you have to curate experience because you want them to come back and you want them to stay. That length of stay and that experience is what's driving your per caps, what might be driving ancillary spend. Now it's going to drive loyalty. And so that experience, I don't think we can ignore it.
Well, as you and I talked the other day, I was asked to write an article for the Orlando Sentinel about our industry and the impact COVID had on it. Not sugarcoated, because it shouldn't be sugarcoated. We had and have issues that were the most catastrophic we've ever seen. But the good news is we've all learned from that. You take every operation from the smallest mom and pop, indoor, outdoor, to the largest Disney. We have learned and we've observed. And as I've said several times, it wasn't zero-based budgeting, it was zero-based planning that we had to go back to. And from that, from this COVID, we've learned a lot of things that are going to be in the playbook for years, I've been told by our operators. Another question is coming in. It says, Francine, this is from Matt. It says, in water parks, what would you say would be the optimum length of stay among guests that would ensure they receive the positive price value relationship and also the highest quality guest experience? Have some water parks just become swim clubs for the locale?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I could answer to just say blanket statement, this is the magic number or this is the magic time frame, but I think it is about understanding your customer. I'll tell you, in the parks that I've worked in, I remember being at Wet and Wild and looking around and seeing all these beautiful shade trees and this beautiful lazy river. And I thought, why isn't this more resort feeling? Well, who would have thought that, 15 years later, the resort business and water parks were a thing. And so really it is about understanding your customer. I can tell you that, length of stay is really very relative because you might be charging a small amount and getting a small number of hours. And the customer is so excited about that jam-packed 2 hours that they did. Or they might say, you know what, I loved it that I could stay there for 8 hours and just lounge and do things at my own pace and I didn't feel rushed. And so it's really going to be subjective, but I think it is understanding what your customer really wants. Price value is a hard one, but I will say that give them what they want, not what you think you want. Because I think a lot of times people make a decision because it's based on what they want. Like, I don't necessarily like tours. I don't like those tours with the little person with the little, umbrella or flag going through.
The stick,
that's not me. But, for somebody else, it is. And so you really have to kind of understand, not make a decision for what you think, but what they think.
Agree. I agree with you with the stick. This is from Sarah. I wonder who that Sarah could be. She says, Great Wolf Lodge CEO Kim Schaefer, who you know, participated in the TV show recently in 2010, Undercover Boss. What can you share with us about how the show impacted the business and the team members that were featured on the show? And were you in on part of the secret? Ears on. Yeah.
My ears on. I had no idea. I had no idea that the show was happening. Nobody knew. And I remember that I got a call from one of our aquatics directors that said, I just got kicked out of my water park. And I said, what? Yeah, I was just told that I needed to get out. And I said, well, what's going on? He goes, well, I saw Kim and she was in a weird outfit and she had a lifeguard uniform on. And I'm like, this is strange. So anyway, there were some people that actually saw her, but it was like they did a very good job about making sure that nobody knew. And I had no idea. Literally, I just come from Asia, the IAAPA Asia show. And the PR guy, he gave me a Great Wolf shirt and said, put this on and go to the boardroom. No idea. I'll tell you, the experience was fantastic in the sense that there was a lot of pride within our team to be able to see our company shown in that light. Now, there was one part where they had what we called an AFR, an accidental fecal release in the pool, and they made great fanfare. And we got a lot of people saying, hey, that's not how you handle that. I'm like, it's TV, people.
Yeah, you got to have something.
Yeah, exactly. But, Kim was phenomenal and still is phenomenal as a leader and just personality, but great pride. I remember going to the premiere and that premiere was fantastic. You could see the numbers of people hitting our website and seeing the press that we got from that. And I don't think you couldn't put a price on that. It was really, really great to give us a lot of pride as a company.
Yeah, that was great. I remember the show. Joe Mamby was on at one time also from our industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, those were fun. Another question up here from Clodagh Lane. In addition to the CDC's position that it is not aware of scientific reports of COVID spreading through water and treated water venues, are there further arguments to what you discussed based in science or chemistry that you're hearing about that you think could be used to support the reopening of the water parks globally?
Yeah, and I think that so the basic premise is 1 part per million chlorinated water at a pH less than 7.5 kills viruses almost instantaneously. Now, there's big charts that kind of show you what that real timing is. And granted, those are lab environments, but I will say, by and large, the water park industry keeps their chlorine levels at even higher than that. But it's not so much just about the water. So let's say I'm in a wave pool. Oh, that's fine. I'm on a slide. That's fine. But it's what you're doing when you're not in the water. So there's still that risk when you're in proximity with other people. And so you still have to put in place all of the same kind of protocols. Even if the water is great, you have to be worried about the public spaces. So, that risk doesn't go away. We still have to be vigilant there. But I would encourage people to look at the chemistry and make sure that your local regulators are aware of that chemistry so that they can understand that the risk is different.
Yeah. We got a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to keep moving here.
Yeah.
This is a very fast moving hour. Okay. If you put your finger up in the wind, what do you think are the coming trends and the new hotspots?
Oh boy, coming trends. One is we saw the trend of water parks and amusement park attractions on cruise ships. That was really getting a lot of momentum right before COVID.
Yeah.
As you said, the Roaring Twenties are going to come into play. I foresee that the pipeline of cruise ship development will continue to grow. They need to recover, no doubt, but they saw that those types of attractions and their destinations were driving bookings. And so again, when we talked about hospitality and curated experiences, a cruise ship is really a hotel on the water, and
Right.
their destinations are those curated experiences that are going to continue to drive bookings. So where does the amusement industry fit into that? I think that they've seen that it's highly marketable stuff. So I see that continuing. It'll take a little while, but it will continue. I do think that our volume model, the business model of volume, is going to take a step back. And I think the business model of fewer people maximizing the asset, maximizing the experience is going to continue to be where it's going to shift. We saw it happening. We saw these more intimate experiences in hotels with a limited capacity. Those places were sold out. And if you can continue to develop that kind of an experience, I think that's gonna bode well. But layering technology on existing stuff, we haven't seen a lot of, I don't know if we've seen anything so earth-shattering in the last few years, but how do you take the staples of our industry and how do you create new technologies that can bolt on or be added into those staple attractions?
Yeah.
It's going to be something spectacular. I see that continue to move forward. And just as we did Endless Surf, we've seen the crossover between sport and recreation and leisure. There is definitely a very kind of healthy, active outdoor lifestyle that is taking root. And you're seeing that in the departure from urban centers. You're seeing that with more people moving into the suburbs. You're also seeing a lot of people moving into their residential areas, but then saying, I'm either going to spend all my money inside my house, or I'm going to spend all my money on my new experience that's so unique that that I can post about it on social media. So again, experience economy, and where does the amusement industry fit into that? We have to find it.
Thank you. I'm reading questions while I'm listening to you too, but thank you for that answer. This comes back. It's a little dicey, but let's see what your take is on it. It says, as you've said, safety is the hallmark of our industry. When we have a serious accident or a fatality, it receives the same media attention as an airliner crash, and we know that. Your focus on risk management stems partially from you indicated having an accident that you had to deal with early on in your years. It says, can you please talk about what the impact of the horrible accident in the Kansas City or the Kansas water park, Varuch, had on the industry, and how did that happen?
Yeah, I don't know that I can talk about how it happened because I don't personally know.
Yeah,
But I will
yeah,
tell you, there's a couple of things. I remember I was in Brazil and I was doing an IAPA event where we had a symposia just about water park. And it was all being done in Portuguese, a translation. And I remember that the Vroogt incident happened right when I was heading there, and I could not sleep for 2 days. And one of the reasons why is I've experienced it myself. I've experienced a fatality on a ride, and it's a devastating experience as a general manager because your team feels it. Your team, they take such responsibility for what they do and they train. And this was a top-rated team. They had won lots of awards and competitions, and yet something happened, and the team feels it. So for me, I was feeling what that team was feeling. What was the team in Kansas City feeling? And that was a horrible feeling. One,
yeah,
it was such a graphic incident, but I guess the learnings are you have to be super vigilant. And anytime you start doing innovations, you have to be hyper vigilant in your methodology. And so, yes, it's great to be the tallest, fastest, what have you, but you have an obligation to go in and test and test and test again, and to use all of your resources possible to make sure that designs are good and that they're
yeah,
safe, not just beautiful looking or exciting looking. That's marketing. That's a brochure. Safety has to be inherent to the design, and that should be the foundation of what we do. And I'm not saying that that ride or attraction had any issues there, but now being a manufacturer and trying to put myself in those shoes, that's
yeah,
what I think of. That's what I think of.
absolutely. Let me ask you, just let me hitchhike on his question. Uh, did the water park industry, as a result of that impact, see an impact on its attendance further into that year? I think it was 2016, somewhere around there, that happened.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if that impacted attendance at water parks, but I do know it was on people's minds. They saw that. I'm sure that the
Yeah.
parks in the general area were feeling it. I remember when the incident happened where in Atlanta with basically an E. coli outbreak. I mean, that affected everybody
Hmm.
across the country. I don't know necessarily that Varuch had that same, because that was one ride in one park, not necessarily painting the entire industry with that brushstroke. However, some of the images that we saw front and center in the news media and social media, that does taint people's impressions of the industry. So you have to be careful to say, no, these are all the things that we go through to make sure that rides are safe. And
Yeah.
when things happen, this is what we do to manage that.
Well, as you know, and we've learned in the last 15 years with these things, the smartphones, when something happens in an attraction, it's on the news in 30 seconds. Actually, it's on the news many times before it gets to the admin building to be reported, because people become instant reporters. So some of it's real, some of it's not, but we just, as you say, we have to be very vigilant
Yeah, and I
and
think one of our biggest concerns going into the future is going to be truth,
Mhm.
because people have their phone, they're taking pictures or videos of things that are happening in parks, and it's contextual. And it's what
Yeah.
was the context around that video and where is the truth in it? And we saw parks where people were posting on social media saying they got sick, and then that causes a firestorm. Next thing you know, the park's attendance drops. And the
Yeah.
reality is the person was never sick, but they said something that everybody thought was true. And that's devastating. So really,
Yeah.
truth in our business is going to be something we have to be on the lookout for.
Well, we've years ago, I was part of the task force. We developed a crisis management program that was very deep and broad, and we presented that to the industry, and it helped get the message out there how to handle. And the very first point in the media crisis was what you said: truth. Be honest, be truthful. And that if you're not, it'll come back and it will haunt you. This one is from Andrew. He said, our industry is so family oriented from a guest perspective, but also for many of the companies that operate and supply. Can you comment on the importance and the impact of generational transitions and consistency as the industry evolves? Can you comment on the
I'm
importance?
thinking I have a hat for this. I think I do. Hold on.
You got a hat?
I've got a hat for this. So this is my nice, beautiful hat
Yahoo!
that I got at Europa Park during Oktoberfest, and playing a little homage to the Mock family. And when we talk about family legacy, you know, I grew up in family businesses. So my first park was at a family business. The second park was a group of siblings, and they had 10 parks. And I'll tell you that part of that has been, the beauty of that has been, they have been small and they've been large. And no matter whether you're a corporation, publicly traded, what have you, if you can run your business like a family business, like you own it personally, that makes all the difference in the world. And you've seen the success of family businesses like Muck Rides, like Zamperla, like Premier Rides. These are family businesses that are continuing to grow. And you know, when I think about the family business of Whitewater, I gotta find my Whitewater hat again. When I think about the family business of Whitewater, you know, Jeff Chutter founded that company 40 years ago. And we turned 40 right during COVID. So, you know, 40 years ago, and he'll say to this day, you know, I'll leave when they're nailing the coffin. And it's one of those things, but at the same time, you have to be thinking about what's the next generation. So now, you know, Paul came into play a couple of years ago, and he's just done a beautiful job. Now, Jeff is one person, Paul is somebody completely different, but you see the transition and you see them growing the business together. In fact, Paul is really the one, he's really leading on Endless Surf in the sense that he's trying to keep pushing on product development. Jeff is such an entrepreneur, and that spirit kind of flows through the entire company. So in a sense, you know how the family has kind of an internal culture? The culture is entrepreneurialism, and that really rings true within the Chutter family. And I'll tell you, they treat all of us like we're part of the family. And that makes you kind of overflow with wanting to take care of the company. So we all kind of act as though we own the business ourselves, just because the family sentiment flows through the whole company. And that's been really great. So when we talk about experience and what we've built upon, that family connection is what we want to build too. We want our customers to be part of our family too. So I think that the amusement industry has thrived. Dick Knoebel was just in the area, and with his whole family and his sons, and you just see how all of these family businesses just do so well.
Well, it's, you know, we've always heard, I've heard my whole life, sometimes it skips a generation. One does well, the next, and then it moves on. In Whitewater with the Chutters, with Jeff and Paul, it didn't skip a generation. It went on.
No, and you're seeing that everywhere else.
Like the Knoebels and the Mocks. It's so much. Francine, we're running out of time. I've got one more question that Tony sent in, and this is a little bit again controversial. It says, for years, just give us your finger in the wind. It says, for years, there have been rumors and discussions about IAAPA and the WWA uniting. Is there merit to this discussion? You've been on both sides of the ledger, and you've chaired one. We know IAAPA is our industry's largest trade organization. What do you think? Could this make sense in the future?
Yeah, you know, when I was chair back in I think it was 2008, this was a topic even back then. And I will tell you, WWA, like I said, I fell in love with the business because of WWA. There's an identity there of water park people that come together, and it's tight knit. If the two organizations come together, I think that one, it could make them all stronger. However, they have to retain the identity of the WWA. And so, you can see, I went through a unification of APSP and at the time NSPF, but that's on the swimming pool side of the business. But they
Mhm.
unified, and when they unified, they actually wanted to retain the identity of both. And so I think they've done a pretty good job of that. I'm not saying that that's what needs to happen here, but I think it's worth exploring to say, are both organizations stronger because of it? And as long as the water park group can retain that identity and close knit, all the things that made them successful, I
Yeah.
think that's what matters.
Well, consolidation saves money too. There are a lot of shows now, and it's very
But
expensive for a company, I'm sure, like Whitewater, to put up that large booth all over the world and expand. But Francine, it's a fast hour, isn't it?
it sure is.
And I've got a lot more questions. What I'm going to do is we ask our guest, Pam will send those out to you. We ask you within a few days to answer those. We'll put them in the ITPS Daily News, and those who couldn't get their question answered on the podcast will get it that way.
Okay.
But I want to thank you so much for being my guest. I was looking forward to this so much, and you have delivered the expectations that I and all the viewers were anticipating. So. It's been
Great. It was
great.
great to be here, and a real honor. Dennis, people listen to you because you're real, and that's good.
Well, we'll see. We fooled another one. Well, thank you so much. I want to, as we close here, I want to just mention and tell Michael we said hi. Francine has a wonderful husband and a great supporter of the industry, Michael Turner, who works over at the Producers Group, and he's like me. We haven't been on airplanes for a year, and I kind of didn't miss it for a while, but now I do. So tell Michael hi when he puts your hats away.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Our upcoming guests, we've got some really great guests lined up coming on. We have on March 24th, Gerardo Artiega, General Manager of Fantasylandia Amusement Park in Chile. He's corporate EVP of the company, and he's a former past chair of IAPA, and he really was an instrumental part in the development of the long range plan. And I think one of the best chairmen we've seen come along. And our other guest, who's going to share the spotlight with him and the podcast that day, is my longtime friend and buen amigo, Marcelo Gutglass, the godfather of South America and the Latin America parks. Just a wonderful man, and just has done an amazing job of leading the industry in Latin America. They'll be with me on March 24th. After that will be our good friend, Andreas Andersson, CEO of Liseberg Park in Sweden. He's a longtime veteran and been an amazing contributor to the strategic planning of our industry. And we're going to discuss his decision to leave Liseberg, come back to Liseberg, and his tenure at IAPA, and what he sees, what his finger is like when he puts it up in the wind, what he sees for the future. And then we have Denise Bexon coming on, Vice President of Human Resources for Maurice Pierce. She's going to talk more about the training and the human aspects and how important it is. And Mario Mammon's going to be joining us, and we hope Richard Coe will share the guest spotlight with him that day. And they're going to talk about different things that have going on in Asia right now. And we have 10 more people lined up. So we got some great people, Jim Futrell, and we hope Tim O'Brien's going to join him. We're going to have some fun talking about historical aspects of the industry. So I want to thank you, Francine, again. Thank you very much for being here. I want to thank everybody for viewing. We've had a wonderful group of people today, several hundred people on, and Francine will get more than that as they tag in on YouTube afterwards. So thanks to everybody Francine, thank you. Let me see. Pam is telling me I have to say our tagline. If we don't have fun, how can we sell fun? I like to say that every time. And we work in a great industry. We don't put smoke in the skies, and we don't contaminate the streams. At the end of the day, what we really do is we put smiles on people's faces and make memories. And what's better than that? Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.